This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. I am Dr. Duke, and today I am joined by Vicki McKenna. Vicki, how are you?
Well, I'm doing as well as can be expected given the dumpster fire that Western civilization's become. Yeah.
Before we start talking about our theme, which is going to be the largest Catholic healthcare systems in the country have now surrendered entirely to the LGBTQ. They are performing transgender surgeries in Catholic hospitals. This is outrageous. But before we do, will you just take a quick moment and explain to the people what just happened in Madison, Wisconsin yesterday?
Okay. It actually made national news. It was a resolution passed by the Dane County Board. Dane County is the county that is Madison, Wisconsin. The Dane County Board passed a resolution declaring Dane County a trans sanctuary for minors, for gender-affirming care, for puberty-blocking hormones, for trans mutilation surgery, for an end to, quote, conversion therapy. They've essentially said that they will not enforce any laws protecting parental rights, protecting children, if this is coming under the umbrella of gender affirmation. And if children, we can only presume from the way the resolution was written, if children decide that their parents are a problem, then presumably this resolution would call upon Dane County to treat the child as primary. And completely ignore any thing that the parents would say. And so we're not quite sure exactly how expansive it is, but it is meant to advise every level of government, from K-12 to municipal government to law enforcement. And it explicitly tells the sheriff of the county not to enforce existing law if it conflicts with a resolution. And that happened with virtually no institutional pushback whatsoever. I personally reached out to the bishop of the Madison Diocese, Donald Hying. I did not even receive a reply. There was no moneyed institutional pushback at all. We had the Dane County Republican Party, led by a very, very activist-minded conservative, thankfully, showed up and brought quite a few people to protest. A handful of folks prayed a rosary. The Wisconsin-based group Gays Against Groomers sent a couple of people in representation to testify against this resolution. But generally speaking, in terms of institutional pushback on this, there was virtually none. In fact, there was not even virtually none. There was none.
Yeah, and there will be no response from what this is a state, if people don't know it, that we have a Republican Assembly, a Republican Senate. We do not own the governorship. It seems to me this, and you can quickly comment on this, we lost the Supreme Court, we've lost the governorship. It's not coming back anytime. I would predict that by the end of this decade, by the end of the 2020s, the Republicans will not own any aspect of government because I
think so. I think you're right.
Yeah. And based on
I think you're right. I could actually give you, political reasons why I think you're right about that. But just because of the way they are positioning themselves vis-a-vis these insane, crazy Democrats, this is not rational stuff that we are resisting, but the way the Republicans are positioning themselves is not to call this out at all. Best we got was a handful of state legislators after the fact, after Dane County had done this, saying, well, we've got the power of the purse and we can punish Dane County for their rogue lawlessness. But they won't, because the only way you can punish Dane County is by withholding shared revenue. And the Republicans just negotiated, they crafted the bill and negotiated the single largest increase in shared revenue, which will mean a mountain of money for Dane County. Then they said, well, we've also, got the ability to restrict education dollars, except that in that shared revenue bill, they passed another record-breaking K-12 funding increase. So all that money has already been signed off on. This is now, this is bad desk pounding at this point.
And it stands to reason that even if they finally got some spine and they did find ways to pull money back from Dane County, you can bet your bottom dollar that hundreds of millions of dollars would be coming in from LGBT groups all across the country to make the Republicans look like monsters. This battle is over. I think we have to make this clear. The fight against this stuff at the federal level and at the state level is almost exclusively lost.
Well, I'm not going to be that pessimistic, because you've had a number of states that have moved aggressively. Pennsylvania, Louisiana, Missouri, Florida. I think Utah just did something. So you've got something like 12 states that have passed very strong protections for minors from this insidious conscription into corruption of trans ideology. So I don't know how much of it is attempted to deal with the school situation, the education situation, but a lot of it has said you are not allowed to perform trans mutilation surgeries on minors. You are not allowed to give puberty blocking hormones or other quote gender drugs to minors. So some states have given us a lot of almost optimism, but not where we are right now. We've got a Republican majority in the legislature that just seems to think that the one thing we all want it to do is to appease the lobbyists that write checks to the campaigns. And so it's far more important to kill off wedding barns in the state of Wisconsin than to protect kids from mutilation. And I say that not facetiously.
Yeah, and the reason I'm a little bit more gloomy about this than you, I think, is, we got a handful of states, maybe 10, 11. But however, those states are under perpetual assault. The federal government is already coming up with ways to punish states that, quote unquote, so the inertia.
You're right.
So what we've bought in places like Florida is a temporary reprieve. But what faith do you have, A, that we're going to get a Republican president in 2 years, and B, or a year and a half, and B, even if we get one, even if Donald Trump wins again, which he ain't, if that were to happen, do you really think any of this is going to change at the federal level? Almost none of it will. And we've seen
it's too deep. When they talk about the deep state is too deep. And I'm not sure anybody is qualified to even understand it enough to dismantle it in a way that would put the people of America back in control of our government. We're not in control of the government. We have what amounts to, a dictatorship in actuality, but we're just not allowed to call it that. We have got the Biden administration issuing guidance documents and executive orders that are telling every single federal agency that all policy and all compliance with all regulation must be put through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or trans inclusion, or CRT. And no one fights that. Nobody's fighting back. The businesses regulated by the federal government are not fighting back. They're caving. The institutions regulated by the government are not fighting back. And even though we've scored some significant victories, Anheuser-Busch, Target, Starbucks, and a handful of these victories, we're not as powerful as BlackRock. We're not the ones sitting on the corporate boards of governance. We're not the ones that get to call the shots on ultimately what the policy is, even if that policy puts shareholders at risk. That's our problem, is that if this were just a matter of legislation, we could be winning this easily. But it's not just a matter of legislation. It's a matter of the way government has been restructured without us paying attention, as a partnership between media companies, corporate global companies, and progressive organizations. So when they're the ones calling the shots and they don't care what the rule of law is, and they could give a darn about the Constitution, and they honestly don't really care if we even drag them into federal court, over time we likely lose.
Yeah, no doubt. And I don't think the time is that long. In fact, I would suggest, and get your comment on this, I think people don't realize the fighting this phase is more or less over. What is now we entered into is the punishment phase. They now control so much. Look at what they're doing in Madison. If you're a mom and dad who do not affirm what your 11-year-old says, no matter what she says, they can take the kid from you. We are now punishing. We are now canceling. We are now using the law to come after and punish people for having the wrong idea when it comes to any of these progressive issues. We're into this period, and it's going to get worse.
I don't think fighting is a lost cause at this point, because, when it's for schools, when it is in schools, then that's where the fight still matters. And in legislation that would strip parental rights, that's where the fight can still matter. It is triage, though. We're not, this is not going to be one great glorified battle that we're going to win. But you can still work to protect your kids, either by taking over school boards, by taking control of school policy, and certainly, by fighting back in an affirmative way to declare the absolute right of parents to control what their children's outcomes are going to be. And that's something that, again, some state legislatures have done that. Ours had an opportunity to do that, has chosen to punt on all of these issues because, they're not culture war people. We're not going to fight the culture war, as Paul Ryan says. I'm not a culture war guy. So we lose it because they're not culture war people. But it's triage. The single best thing you can do is to take your kids out of K-12. It's the single best thing you can do is to take your kids out of K-12 and not even necessarily get them into a religious institution, because as we're going to talk about shortly, the religious institutions have been completely co-opted, infiltrated, and in terms of their moral authority, destroyed. So you homeschool your kids and find a way to do it. I know that it's really difficult in double income earner households, but suffer a little bit financially for your kids. It will pay dividends to you, to them, and ultimately to the country.
Yeah, it's interesting that Paul Ryan isn't a culture war guy, but he's a get millions of dollars from lobbyists kind of guy. That's who he is. Isn't the same Paul Ryan who's on the board at Fox, who's now, as we now know, is mandating DEI and LGBTQ sensitivity training for people at Fox News? That same Paul Ryan? And to be very clear,
that would be the same one.
Yeah, that would be the same one.
The same one who likes to wear his Catholicism on a sleeve.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that guy.
Mm-hmm.
That guy.
And to be very clear, you and I agree about that. You never stop fighting, even if you can't win. You gotta fight. However, my premise is like you just kind of said yourself, that it's not a battle likely we're going to win because we don't have any allies. And speaking of allies, the one place where you would think in a battle like this that we could go to would be to Christian churches. And so we're going to do a quick break here. I think this is a good time for the break.
Today's episode is brought to you by FreedomProject Academy. Take back your kids' education. FPA's fully accredited classical curriculum provides live, on-demand, and homeschool courses built on Judeo-Christian values. Request your information packet and save 10% on tuition by visiting freedomforschool.com. That's freedom, F-O-R, school.com.
So we're back, and the first part of this show, if you're watching in segments, you want to go back and watch that, because we laid some foundational ideas about this fighting, this seemingly losing battle against transgenderism. And one of the places at Moms and Dads we ought to be able to count on to help us in this battle would be Christianity, but that's not the case. We find out this week that hospitals, Catholic hospitals in the nation's largest Catholic healthcare systems, are performing transgender surgeries. This is a bombshell report, a 64-page report, which details common spirit health promotion of transgenderism, was published by the Lepanto Institute, a Catholic organization dedicated to the defense of the Catholic Church against assaults from without and within. Well, this is a big within one. Notice the title. Throw that up there again, Mike, real quick. Common Spirit Health. Notice the abomination of the word Holy Spirit. Notice the embracement of the two-spirit mentality of certain Native American cultures. This is what your Catholic Church is promoting. Common spirit health and the sex change industry. Take a look at some of the business here. Common Spirit was created through a 2019 merger with Dignity Health and Catholic Health Initiative, which required approval from multiple archbishops. Common Spirit Health is sponsored by the Catholic Healthcare Federation, which is legally defined as a public juridic person within the meaning of the Code of Canon Law for the Roman Catholic Church. This is unbelievable that the hierarchy of the church in this country are now performing, raising money for, buying machines to help them do sex change operations, even on minors.
Wow. And millions of dollars for a robot. Employees also get their gender affirmation, including mutilation, covered. And so I guess the Catholic Church, I mean, they've said nothing, right? Since the Lepanto Institute has exposed this. From what I can see, the Conference of Bishops has said nothing. The Vatican has said nothing. Individual archbishops have said nothing. Presumably, they think God makes mistakes, because that's what this says. God isn't perfect. He didn't create you in the exact way he wanted to create you. No. God makes mistakes. And here at whatever the healthcare organization is, here we are going to correct the mistakes of God. Now, I don't want to go too far down a winding rabbit hole, but just this week, there was an official from the World Economic Forum who gave a lecture on how awesome it's going to be when AI can correct the mistakes of Christianity, when AI can correct the Bible to make sure that God is perfect, finally perfected by the machine God computer. I mean, that's who's saying stop? No, is it the bishops? You cannot rely on institutions any longer to defend you. This has got to be your fight. And as far as the Catholics are concerned, this isn't, oh, well, to hell with the Catholics. Maybe to hell with the institution. But you defend your faith against the insidious, corrupted, sinful infiltration that has apparently at this point rendered decent people with power inside the Catholic Church too terrified to speak. Because there are good priests out there who want to stand up and say something, but are fearing getting thrown out of their positions and getting completely isolated and shunned. And we've already seen it happen for priests, a priest in La Crosse, a priest in Madison, Wisconsin, several across the country, for just simply standing up and saying, this is what the Word of God says. And the Word of God says LGBTQWTF is a lie and a sin. Those people have been punished. Those are the ones who are no longer allowed to speak and make an attempt to reach the masses with their sermons, with their homilies. So, I'm not even surprised at this point when you've got a pope that would be willing to put a pagan idol in a cathedral and tell people that was not a false god. I at this point, I don't understand how anybody can stand up and defend the institutional church any longer.
No, you cannot. And by the way, if God makes mistakes, as the Roman Catholic Church and much of Christianity seems to be arguing now, if God makes mistakes, because if you are supporting transgenderism and transgenderism transformation surgery, you are supporting the idea that God is a mistake fool. And if God makes mistakes, then the idea of God is a mistake. And that's what they're ultimately going for.
I think you're right. And if God makes mistakes and man can correct the mistakes, man is God. And again, I don't want to go too far down a winding rabbit hole here, but I was recently listening to a conversation that Jordan Peterson was having with one of his guests who had written a book about this trans craziness. And she said something really, really interesting, and that was that people who have chosen to present themselves or to identify as the opposite gender, or multiple genders, or whatever, demand to speak their reality, their truth into reality so that everybody must affirm and recognize it. And what was the only entity that could ever speak something into being? That's God. And so this really is ultimately about taking away the idea that there is something greater than man, that there is something transcendent, transcendental and supernatural. And if that is in fact true, then this lovely little idea that our founding fathers had about the United States, that our rights are not given to us by man, but by a higher power, we are done.
Yes,
We're
we are
done. Western civilization is done. We're done. Christianity's not done because God is God. But it is, you should start looking up in the sky for the giant meteor pretty soon.
Yeah, and look, global socialism is the future. You can't deny this. What do you think all this UNocrat support of all this AI taking over? Pretty soon we're not going to have to worry about progressive teachers destroying the minds of kids. It's going to be programmatic AI teaching doing this uniformly across the educational platforms of this entire world. I'll go one step further.
It's impossible to argue against that.
It is absolutely.
I think it's a fool's errand to argue against you on that.
So one of them that, we'll give some more information here. One of the networks, these Catholic hospital networks, is St. Francis Memorial Hospital located in San Francisco. It says that it has a facility it calls, quote, the Gender Institute. And you can see on the screen here all the different Catholic systems that are doing these things. They call it the Gender Institute, where it provides gender-affirming care. The program is openly associated with Common Spirit, which we showed you, with the Gender Institute's email ending in commonspirit.org. Quote, St. Francis Memorial Hospital is part of Common Spirit Health, a national healthcare ministry that shares the above mission, vision, and values. From our entire hospital staff undergoing pronoun training to following the guidelines set by the Human Rights Campaign Foundation, the St. Francis Memorial Hospital Gender Institute's best-in-class surgeons and specialists are dedicated to the gender-affirming individual experience. Where do you hear anything about Christianity? Where do you see anything about it?
No. Human Rights Campaign, which is the global umbrella organization of GLSEN and some of these other Trevor Project, Soros-backed, left-wing, foundation-funded Human Rights Campaign, which is pushing all of this ideology into education, into government, into churches. Again, you're institutional. Where are the Baptists? Where are the Lutherans? Where are the Methodists? Where are anyone? We used to think we could count on the Catholics, but apparently the institutional church has nothing to say about this. By the way, when I say institutional church, I don't mean your local parish. I don't mean your local priest. There are some great godly people in the Catholic Church fighting as hard as they can against this. Find those people. Find those churches. Yeah. Find that help. Find that that holiness, because it's still there.
You mentioned how the Catholic Church is covering this at the highest levels. Take a look at this. Catholic Healthcare Network covers sex change operations for the employees. The Catholic Church. Think about this the next time you put money into a basket at a Catholic church, that they are now forcing, and many they're offering and providing with your money these kinds of things. The utilization review program is designed to help ensure that all covered persons, this is in Catholic organizations, receive medically necessary and appropriate health care. And what does medical necessary mean to the Catholics who have crafted this? It means all of these things. Advanced imaging procedures. How about this? Transition-related services. These are now medically necessary gender reassignment and reconstructive services. Medically necessary mental health vis-a-vis transitioning. Medically necessary hormone therapy, even for little children, is part of the prescription drug plan. All of these things here. Genital surgeries. All this now is medical necessity under the Catholics.
They will lop your genitals off. I mean, if it were only tracheal shaving, which just sounds so. I'm at a loss. I'm really at a loss. But again, medically necessary. That is translated into God makes mistakes. Sincerely, the Catholic medical system. Sincerely, the Catholic Church.
Stop sending them your money. Just stop giving them your money. If you're a good Catholic and you need to be there for the sacrament, stop giving them money. Like every other venal, materialistic organization in this country, what's left of the institution of the Roman Catholic Church by the hierarchy, not by necessarily the individual priests. Nevertheless, it is as corrupt as anything else that we've got going right now. And that's going to wrap up this show. If you have any questions, comments, or want to support the show, simply visit drdukeshow.com. For all of us at the Dr. Duke Show, thanks, and we will see you next time.